If I hadn't taken that shortcut that night, I probably never would have been noticed. And maybe that would have been better. I used to think of those late walks home as quiet time to clear my head after work, but that night changed how I look at every empty street. I worked evenings at a small convenience store on the edge of town, the kind that stayed open too late for how few customers it got. By closing time, the road outside was silent, except for the electric buzz of the neon sign and the soft hum of the freezers inside. My walk home took 20 minutes, but I always shaved time by cutting through a narrow residential area. It wasn't dangerous, just quiet. Old wooden fences, porch lights left on for no one, and street lamps that flickered more than they worked. I'd taken that shortcut for months. Never a problem, never a reason to think twice. The air was colder that night, heavy with moisture, the kind that fogs your breath in the glow of a streetlight. I remember pulling my hood tight, tucking my hands in my jacket, and starting the familiar route. About halfway down the bend, I saw a gray sedan parked under the last working lamp. The engine was running low, headlights off, just the dull red of its taillights cutting through the mist. I walked past, not thinking much of it, but a few seconds later, I heard the soft roll of tires behind me. The car crept forward, matching my pace, then stopped when I turned onto the next block. I didn't look back. I didn't want to give whoever was inside any reaction. The following night, it was there again. Same spot, same hum of the engine under the same flickering lamp. The driver's window was rolled halfway down, and I could make out the outline of a person sitting perfectly still, head turned toward me. I tried to stay calm, acting like I hadn't seen them, but I could feel the weight of their stare as I passed. The moment I turned the corner, the car began to move, its headlights staying dark. The sound followed me for 2 blocks and then faded. I told myself it could have been anyone, a rideshare driver, a neighbor. But when it appeared again the next night, parked even farther back, I stopped pretending it was coincidence. It wasn't. After that, I started changing my route, avoiding the shortcut, sticking to the main roads where I could see traffic lights and open stores. But a week later, when I thought maybe I'd imagined it, I took the shortcut again. The gray sedan was waiting, parked the opposite direction this time, facing the way I was coming from. I turned around fast, crossed the street, and kept walking toward the long route home. Behind me, the engine started. The car followed slowly, maintaining just enough distance to stay out of the light. The night it escalated. It was raining. The roads glistened. Every light stretched into a reflection. I locked the store, stepped outside, and felt that heavy quiet of late hours. No people, no cars, only the sound of rain hitting metal. Halfway through the shortcut, the familiar engine appeared again, a low hum in the distance. The sedan came around the curve with its lights off, rolling forward like it knew exactly when I'd be there. I picked up my pace, but when I turned left, the car turned too. That was when I started running. My boots splashed through puddles, the sound of the tires picking up speed behind me. When the noise stopped, I thought maybe they'd turned away, but then 2 car doors slammed. I didn't look back. I ran harder. Footsteps hit the wet pavement, fast and uneven. Someone called out something I couldn't make out. Then again, louder. And that time I heard my name. The shock of it almost made me stumble. They knew who I was. I cut between 2 houses, slipping on wet grass, jumping a low fence into another yard. The sound of their shoes followed, crunching gravel, closing the distance. I spotted a motion light flicker on ahead of me and ran for it, hoping someone might notice. I ducked behind 2 trash bins beside a wooden fence, crouched low, and held my breath. The rain was heavier now, and water dripped from the edges of my hood into my eyes. The footsteps stopped on the other side of the fence. One of them spoke again, calm and low, saying they just wanted to talk. That voice, it didn't sound angry, it sounded sure, and that made it worse. They walked the fence line slowly, gravel shifting under their weight. Then silence. After what felt like forever, I heard an engine start in the distance. I stayed there long after they were gone, too afraid to move, before finally cutting through backyards until I reached the main road. I made it to the gas station near Maple and Ridge. The clerk stared when I walked in, soaked and shaking, asking to use the phone. I told him 2 men had followed me, tried to grab me, that they called me by name. He called the police right away. The officers came, asked for details, but there wasn't much to give. No license plate, no clear look at their faces, nothing except a gray sedan and 2 tall men in dark jackets. They gave me a ride home and said they'd patrol the area. Nothing ever came of it. For a while, I stopped walking altogether. I borrowed a coworker's car, switched shifts, anything to avoid that route. But routine creeps back in. Bills, rent, the same hours. Eventually, I went back to closing. The first few nights were quiet again, enough to trick me into feeling safe. Then, one night, as I turned down that street, I saw a car parked beneath the trees. Same shape, same faded color. The window on the driver's side was half open. I slowed, pretending to check my phone, and when I looked up again, the car was gone. No sound, no headlights, just gone. After that, it was smaller things. A car idling across the street with its lights off until I looked toward it. Footsteps behind me that matched mine too perfectly. A wrong number calling me by my name before hanging up. Each moment small enough to doubt, but not enough to ignore. I reported it again once, but without proof there wasn't much to do. The officers were polite, but I could tell they thought I was just nervous walking home alone. I moved apartments a few months later, closer to downtown where there's constant traffic and noise. I tell myself I'm safer now, and maybe I am. But sometimes, when the night gets too quiet and a car passes under my window slower than it should, I feel that same pressure in my chest, like something from that night never ended. I've caught glimpses of gray sedans since then. Never close, never long enough to confirm, but always there when I least expect it. Maybe it's nothing. But deep down, I know what I felt. That night was real. I never found out who they were or what they wanted, and I hope I never do. I used to think delivering food at night was the easiest job anyone could have. No bosses breathing down your neck. No customers to argue with. Just you, your car, and the sound of the road. I liked the quiet, the way the city emptied after dark, how the traffic lights stayed red longer and the air felt cleaner. Most nights were uneventful, just a list of addresses, one after another. People who didn't want to see you, just wanted their food. It wasn't the kind of work that made you nervous, not until I started getting orders from that house on the edge of town. The first night it showed up on my app, I didn't think twice. A small order, same fast food chain as half my other deliveries. The directions took me out toward the older part of the suburbs, where the roads narrow and the houses sit far apart. When I pulled up, the place looked quiet. No lights on, No car in the driveway. Only a single porch light glowing weakly above the door. The instructions said, "Leave at door, no contact." So I dropped the bag and left. Simple. 2 nights later, same house, different name. I recognized the address before I even accepted it. This time, I hesitated, thumb hovering over the screen for a few seconds. But it was on my route, so I took it. The same quiet street, same faint porch light, same silence. Nothing unusual except for how empty it felt, like no one had lived there in a while. Again, no one answered the door. I left the food and drove off. The 3rd night, the address popped up again. Different name, but same spot near the bottom of the map. I accepted without even realizing it until I was halfway there. I remember thinking it was just someone who liked ordering late. But when I walked up the steps, the door opened before I could knock. A woman stood there, maybe mid-30s, shoulder-length dark hair, wearing a loose shirt that looked more like something you'd sleep in than answer the door with. She smiled, a little too easily, and thanked me. Said she was glad they finally sent the same driver twice in a row. I said it was just coincidence, handed her the bag, and turned to leave. Before I reached the bottom step, she called out, asked my name. I told her. She said hers was Mara. After that, I started seeing her name appear more often. Sometimes the orders came through the app, sometimes as guest checkouts, but always around the same time, right before midnight. She'd open the door every time now, a little more talkative each visit. Asked what hours I usually worked, if I stayed busy, if I liked driving this late. She laughed a lot, smiled in that way that keeps your attention longer than it should. There was nothing aggressive about her, just that kind of curiosity that felt halfway between flirting and boredom. A week later, she asked if I wanted to wait inside while she found her wallet. It was cold out, and I didn't want to seem rude, so I stepped just inside the doorway. The house looked strange up close. A couch, a coffee table, white walls. No photos, no clutter, no smell of food or air freshener. The kind of space that looks ready to sell, not to live in. She disappeared down the hallway, her footsteps light against the floor. I stood near the entryway, listening. Somewhere deeper in the house, a floorboard creaked. Not from her direction. Somewhere else. A heavier sound, like someone shifting their weight. She came back quickly, smiling again, handing me a few bills. "Sorry," she said. "I didn't mean to keep you waiting." Her voice was calm, but her eyes kept darting past me toward the back of the house. Then she thanked me again and told me to drive safe. I stepped outside, trying to shake the tension, but before I reached my car, I heard something from inside. A heavy noise, like a door closing hard. I turned around. Through the thin curtains, I could see Mara standing near the window, looking over her shoulder, her face lit by a faint glow from deeper in the room. She pulled the curtain shut. I told myself it wasn't my problem. I got in the car, marked the delivery complete, and drove away. But halfway down the street, I checked the time on my phone. The order had already been marked delivered before I left the car. That shouldn't have been possible. The next few nights, I kept an eye out for that address, but it didn't show up. For a while, I thought maybe it was done. Maybe she'd found another driver. Then one Friday, the notification popped up again. Same street, slightly different house number. I almost ignored it, but curiosity won. When I pulled into the block, I slowed the car without meaning to. The porch light was off this time, The windows looked darker, but the silhouette of the house was the same. I parked anyway, took the bag, walked to the door. My hand was halfway to the bell when I saw movement through the thin slit between the curtains. Someone standing just out of sight, tall, broad-shouldered. Not her. The door opened halfway. Mara was there again. Same soft smile, same calm tone. She thanked me quickly, said something about a mix-up with the address, that she'd just moved a few doors down. Behind her, in the dimness of the living room, I saw the edge of a coat sleeve vanish into the hallway. She noticed where I was looking and stepped slightly to block the view. Her smile didn't fade, but her voice tightened. "Thanks again," she said. "Have a good night." I left without saying anything. When I reached the car, I could feel eyes on me, the kind of instinct that doesn't need proof. I didn't look back. I drove straight to the gas station a few miles away, parked under the lights, and sat there until my next order came through. I didn't see Mara again after that night. For almost a week, I avoided the app completely, telling myself I just needed a break. But one evening, as I was about to delete it for good, a new notification popped up. Order available. Same zone. The address wasn't hers exactly, but close. A few blocks away, same part of town. And the name on the order was different, but the profile picture, just a small circular photo, was her. Same smile, same dimly lit background behind her. I turned off my phone and sat there for a long time, thinking about that sound I heard inside the house, about the shadow that moved behind her, about the way she looked past me like she was afraid of something standing just out of view. I've delivered thousands of orders, and I can't remember most of them, but sometimes, when I drive past that part of town late at night, I slow down without realizing it, scanning the porches and windows for that weak glow of a single porch light. I never stop. I just keep driving, hoping that whoever was in that house with her stays there, and that she never tries to order again. I never thought the quiet habit that made me feel safe would be the same one that made me stop trusting my own neighborhood. I'd been jogging every night for years. Same route, same time, same rhythm. It was the one part of my day that belonged entirely to me. I lived in a calm area on the north side of town, full of houses that looked nearly identical, trimmed lawns, the faint smell of sprinklers on concrete. During the day, it felt alive with kids and lawn mowers and dogs barking. But after dark, the streets emptied. I liked that. I liked the sound of my shoes hitting the pavement, the steady breathing, the calm repetition. Most nights I didn't see a single person until I was back home again. The first time I noticed him, it didn't even register as anything strange. He was across the street, standing near a parked car, pretending to look at his phone. I only caught a glimpse of him between two trees, just enough to register dark clothes and a baseball cap. I kept running, told myself he was probably waiting for someone. But the next night, same street, same time, he was there again. This time he was walking, heading in the opposite direction, slow and casual, not looking at me directly but definitely aware of me. I brushed it off. People walk their dogs, smoke, check mail. It's a neighborhood, not a ghost town. But by the fourth night, I knew he wasn't random. He wasn't there every single time, but often enough to make me anticipate it. Sometimes I'd spot him early, standing by a lamppost pretending to tie his shoe. Other nights he'd appear later, a block or two behind, walking in my direction but never closing the distance. It wasn't the staring that got to me. It was how subtle he was, like he wanted to be seen just enough to remind me he existed. I changed my route one night, took a loop through the next subdivision. I didn't see him at first, and for a few minutes it felt good, almost freeing, until I turned the last corner toward home and saw him again on the sidewalk ahead, half hidden behind a hedge, his face barely visible in the dim light. I crossed to the other side, pretending to check my watch, but he matched the pace of my steps until I reached the end of the street. Then he was gone. I started to dread the evenings. Every shadow felt like it might be him. Every car creeping by made me slow down to listen. I even told myself I was overreacting, that I'd just gotten used to seeing the same stranger around and was building a story around him. But it's hard to stay rational when patterns keep repeating. He always appeared somewhere along that route. Never too close, never too far. Once, I saw him reflected in a window when I turned a corner. By the time I looked back, the sidewalk was empty. A week later, I switched to earlier runs, right after sunset when there was still some daylight left. For a few days, nothing happened. Then one evening, as I slowed near the park to catch my breath, I saw him again sitting on a bench by the path, arms resting on his knees, like he'd been there for a while. He didn't look at me, didn't move, just sat still. I took the long way around the park and jogged straight home. I locked every door twice. I didn't see him the next day or the one after, but my brain kept replaying how calm he'd looked, like waiting there was just part of his own routine. I decided to skip a few days of running altogether. When I finally went out again, it was later than usual. The streets were empty, no lights on in the houses, the sound of crickets filling the air, the kind of silence that makes you aware of how exposed you are. I was halfway through my route when I noticed movement behind me. I didn't turn right away, just slowed slightly. The footsteps slowed too. I turned and saw him about 20 yards back, halfway hidden by a hedge. Phone raised like he was filming or checking directions. It was enough to freeze me mid-step. I started jogging again, faster this time, and I could hear the faint rhythm of shoes behind me matching mine for a few seconds before fading. I didn't stop until I reached my block. When I looked back from the corner, he was standing still in the middle of the street, watching. But the second I blinked, he stepped into the dark space between two parked cars and vanished. For the next week, I avoided that side of the neighborhood. I told myself it was fine, that if he'd wanted to do something, he would have done it already. But logic didn't help much when the unease became part of the routine. I'd start my jog and feel like I was being timed, like someone somewhere was marking down what hour I left and when I'd return. I even saw a black car once, parked near the same corner where I'd first spotted him, and I caught myself waiting for the door to open. It didn't. I told myself I was connecting things that weren't connected. It was a Thursday when I realized he knew exactly where I lived. I'd finished my run early and walked the last block to cool off. The air smelled like rain, and everything was quiet. When I turned onto my street, I saw someone standing near the intersection, a dark silhouette leaning against the stop sign. He wasn't moving, wasn't smoking, wasn't looking at a phone. I didn't have to see his face to know it was him. I walked slower, trying not to show I noticed, but my house was only a few doors away. I took my keys out quietly, crossed to the other side of the road, and cut between two parked cars straight into my driveway. My heart was pounding so hard I could hear it in my ears. I unlocked the door, stepped inside, and turned off the porch light immediately. I peeked through the curtain. The street was empty again, just like always. No footsteps, no figure, No sound of a car leaving. I told myself it was fine, that maybe it hadn't even been him, but my pulse didn't believe it. I didn't go out running for several days after that. When I finally did, it was midday on a Saturday, sun high, kids playing outside, cars passing every few minutes. It felt normal again, almost safe. I didn't see him anywhere, and that helped. I started running only during the day from then on, but sometimes, when I pass that same corner where I first saw him, I still feel that same tightening in my chest, the same quiet certainty that someone's eyes are following me, even when I can't see a soul around. It's been months now, and I haven't seen him again. No messages, no car, no figure standing at the end of the street. I tell myself it's over, that maybe it was just some stranger who happened to cross paths with me too many times. But some nights, when I'm getting ready for bed and glance out the window toward the streetlights, I catch myself scanning for movement, waiting for a shape to separate from the shadows. Even though I never see anyone, that quiet sense that someone might be watching never really fades.